Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Ekman of Gold Derby. Here with me are double Emmy nominees, Katrina Crawford and Mark Bashore, for nominated for Outstanding Main Title Design for both Lord of the Rings of Power, and The White Lotus. You both went from, 0 Emmy nominations to 2 Emmy nominations in one single day. So congratulations are in order. A wonderful job. And what was your reaction when you found out about those nominations?
That's wild. 1 is wild, 2 is insane. So blessed, I guess. And it's for a whole team. I mean, we work with amazing people, so it's super excited to see their work, our work recognized that has a lot of heart into it.
Were you folks that were watching on nomination morning, were you refreshing, or did you just suddenly have lots of texts coming in and congratulations?
Yeah, we got some we got some early morning word on it, and yeah, it's just really nice to see these things connect with people. We're off the radar, we're a small firm in Seattle, and it's kind of affirming that the democracy of the process still works, and that good work can shine through no matter where you are, who you are, and stuff like that. And it just, those two titles seem to connect with people pretty powerfully, so super proud.
And I think these two title designs, I don't think they could be more different from one another, which is also fascinating. So I would love to start out with just kind of the concept behind the Rings of Power opening, because I think it's a really beautiful example of like abstraction with these grains of sands transforming and morphing into these different shapes. So why the sand? Where was the inspiration for that?
Yeah, you're right. The idea of abstraction or distillation is super critical in what we do. Like, how can we be tangential to a show and yet distill some like overlying truths or themes? And that one, our creative director on that project, Anthony Vitaliano, it's one of these amazing things where we really believe in people kind of working in new ways and approaching things with a very fresh eye. And our creative director on that project was not a Tolkien person, like maybe had seen a movie in high school, like really wasn't. And it's beautiful. So he went back to the beginning and was like, okay, Tolkien, and we're all getting books, and he's like, okay, he has this creation myth, and in his myth, it's gorgeous. These Ainir, these angelic beings, are singing the world into being. And so that's essentially cymatics. The phenomenon that we used as the base of what we were doing is sound visualized. So how something is being created through sound waves. So it was just like a 1-for-1, this beautiful pulling together of a world through music and sound. We have a lot of musicians, a lot of scientists on our group. There's a lot of people listening to science podcasts as they go to sleep each night. Like, people are really in those worlds. So that blending of worlds for our team was also idyllic. So that's really how it came to be. And then also ties back to this whole idea of a circle and the rings, because things aren't being destroyed. Like, when you watch cymatics, the sand isn't going away for the most part. It's moving, it's shifting, it's changing, and it's kind of uncontrolled. Like, that sense of creation, super real when you're watching it. It feels magical.
Well, excuse me, speaking of the creation aspect, I feel like many shows would just choose to do everything digitally for a process like that. You actually have so much practical work with that sand in there. Why was that process special? Why did you choose that way to go about it?
Well, I mean, the simplest answer is we don't really like things that computers make, because I mean, kids, I mean, I'm old, so I'm still sort of impressed by it, but I always watch our kids, and they're not that impressed by things that computers make, because computers can kind of make anything. And if you ever watch a young person watch stuff that is fully CG, whether it's a brand new movie or anything, it's kind of amazing how quickly they understand. They see right through it. And they understand that code is making it more than craft maybe. Now, that said, we knew we needed to bring a lot of firepower and digital firepower to this. So there is a lot of code and there is a lot of CG, but it begins with an analog world. So, I mean, Katrina ordered a science kit, a cymatic science kit, and we put it on our, what used to be a kitchen table, but is now sort of command central for making things, and an iPhone. And I think you put all kinds of music through it, country music and Gregorian chants, and this sand just started to move around in this primal way. And just even with an iPhone and this small science kit, it was magical. It moved from science to magic very, very quickly. And like Katrina said, had this primal vibe to it that we knew needed to stay in, even though we can't form trees and mountains and the things we need computers to do that. But it's the combination that really made it kind of cut through.
And I don't know if you've gone online, but there's quite a few like Tolkien fans that have done deep dives into the symbolism of what might be in there in this creation myth story. Have you peeked at those to see, you know, how closely did they align with my own concept here?
Well, that was really fun because it was part of the beginning, like, oh my gosh, of this job was to think about, okay, we have people who are professors of Tolkien's world, and we have people who have no idea, and everything in between. And so how do you make something that resonates with all those people across? So, and then that comes down to these basic themes. So, you know, just creation in general, that idea that even in Tolkien's myth, there's a sense of flaw. So that comes back to what Mark was talking about, where also just being really authentic to that idea of creation, that it isn't this perfectly symmetrical thing, that he, in his myth, took that discord and made it part of his universe. So that was super cool. The idea of magic and time and space, these are approachable to anyone, whether you know Tolkien's world or not. So having this sense of being really back and seeing something form and destruct and change gives you a sense of millennium and time, like you're a witness to this world, I guess. So those big things helped us kind of, you know, get a level that everyone can interact with. And then the icons, like you're saying, give us a way to do, again, like different levels of meaning. So like you can see the mountains of Moria, you can see these 3 peaks and see them as geography, part of this world that's epic and grand. Or you can say, oh, Khazad-dûm, and you can move to the dwarves and Mithril really quickly. And you can keep going and go all the way to the Balrog if you are in that world. So you can go so deep. And then there's things where people had different meanings, and we love that. Like, that's great that it's open enough for everyone to kind of interact with.
Yeah. And your designs for the sequence for White Lotus is another main title sequence with a lot of hidden meaning, I would say. But in this case, you know, with Rings of Power, you are introducing a new show to audiences. With White Lotus, you already had a really well-known, iconic opening sequence that you then have to kind of reinvent for season 2. Does that set up those, does that change your approach at all?
So for like doing season 2 for White Lotus, does that change our approach if we've done 1?
Yeah.
Yeah. It does. Mark has a good statement about how, you know, wallpaper and walls don't move, and how do you stay kind of in this world of being a witness to, and yet have energy. I don't know if you want to talk about that, Mark, but it is.
Yeah, well, we pitched that wallpaper idea for White Lotus season 1, and Mike White instantly gravitated toward it. But they were just stills on a storyboard, and they looked handsome. But then it's like, oh my God, what if we just sold wallpaper? Like, this is going to be the most boring main title in the history of television, because wallpaper doesn't move, and it's going to look stupid if we animate it. And so we panicked for a moment, and then we just calmed down, and we like these simple things like season 1, season 2 of White Lotus. And also, as complex and technical as Rings of Power is, it's still simple. You know, it looks simple, and it's meant to be timeless. And we always we always say to ourselves, is this going to look cool in 50 years or even 100 years? Is this going to look or beautiful? Not cool, but beautiful. And so simplicity is oftentimes for us the key to that it leaves a lot of room for people to interpret and just to take it in and bring themselves to it a little bit. And see, the biggest compliment is when you hear somebody say it feels almost like it was made for me. And we did hear that, especially with Tolkien fans on Lord of the Rings and of course White Lotus. It just seemed that's really what I think we're all doing in the film craft, is trying to connect with other people. When you see a movie or a scene or an image or music and you go, oh, God, this person just made it for me. That's when you're cooking with gas, at least in our little industry.
Yeah, I love doing a repeat viewing of the White Lotus, taking in that main sequence after knowing, you know, the characters more, because there's such clever symbolism, I think, as actors' names are popping up in the credits. How do you take, you know, what happens with a character arc and kind of boil it down into one little, you know, hidden message?
Yeah, that's hard, Sam. You're right, because you know, there's certain characters and you can think of 10, you know, a dozen possibilities of what could represent some aspect of them. And then what kind of is, you know, some of them even do have double or triple kind of things where, you know, like Theo James, he is represented both by the statue, this naked, gorgeous statue, and by the dog who's peeing on the pedestal, marking his territory. So like we had a hard time giving up on some where we, you know, they got extra perhaps, but yeah, I mean, I think keeping them open enough, and then our art form is a little bit different that way, right? Because you are watching it multiple times. So we love to reward people and give you a reason for watching, and you see something in episode 7 where you're like, ah, I get it. Or even in Rings of Power, you know, there's some that you don't, like the Triskelion, you don't understand until the very last episode. So, you know, just having some extra little bits that are delightful. We love try to do that.
Katrina gets all the credit for pouring through the scripts in detail over and over again and coming up with several potential options.
Job. So terrible.
Well, but like just writing down sheets and sheets of paper. Like I remember she's like, it seems like this is before, we're not seeing the show. Nobody's seeing the show. In fact, they were still shooting when we began on the sequence. And Katrina said, it seems like this Vespa ride is kind of a really funny scene. You kind of get the sense it's going to be an integral part of the White Lotus season 2 story. And so we were like, how do you portray a Vespa ride? Maybe what if it's 2 people on a burro instead? And so retransferring scenes into this painted ancient world where hopefully people are like, oh, I know that. And or maybe it's a little more mysterious, or maybe even more on the nose, but it puts a smile on faces.
Yeah. That one's sort of an anomaly. We don't usually ever repeat something or directly connect to the show. We kind of try to stay a little tangential, but that one, the writing was so good. It was so delightful. And just, it's such a good setup for everything that follows for them in terms of their relationship that, couldn't help ourselves.
And both of these sequences have really incredible music that accompanies them. And especially, I mean, I have been out dancing countless times and a house remix of the White Lotus theme comes on. So they're really embedded in people's minds. Does that music kind of get created in tandem with what you're doing? Does it come after? What is that collaboration process like?
It can be usually during, but I think in both those cases, they were scored sort of as we dug in. There were sketches, or I guess they call them sketches, or sort of a temp theme that were built, and then they get rebuilt or rescored, or even in the case of Rings of Power actually orchestrated later. But yeah, that music is so integral. We really, in everything we do, we always feel like the ears are a little bit under credited with emotionally, when it connects with picture, how emotionally powerful it can be. So we tend to edit for a long time to create reactions and edits or camera moves or anything right to the music. We edit for months sometimes, not weeks, to always just be looking for opportunities in the music to so the music's our guide, honestly, on these.
Yeah, you use the word embedded in that. It's like very descriptive of the process, like trying to it's sort of like writing in a way, but like I guess you can hear when music is just underneath something and they run as two separate tracks. And then there's another thing where they synergistically become something else because they're together. And we always aim for trying to hit that where they amplify each other and create something more. So that when you hear the voices, the female voices come in on Rings of Power, you know, hopefully you get like a little shudder of it's starting, like this is it. There's a magical element to those voices coming in, and there's a sense of just beginning. I mean, it's gorgeous. So trying to meld the visuals with that so you feel it viscerally. You know, just that's our job, is just to viscerally get you, your body and your mind, like ready for a show so that you're feeling those things somatically. And the same thing, I mean, Christabel's music for White Lotus is amazing. You couldn't ask for better. You know, Mark, as an editor, often music will stay the same through. Well, Christabel's music, it has these clear chapters. It totally derails at the end, which is just lovely. I mean, it's an editor's dream, beyond being just fabulous.
Well, I'm glad you said that about, you know, preparing the viewer for the show, because there is a very, you know, to me, an annoying button on every streaming service, which is the skip intro button. And I remember, I think HBO put out a poll on Twitter of how many of you, you know, watch the White Lotus title sequence every episode, and it was over 75%, I think, said yes.
Good.
So if we think about that remaining, those holdouts, why should they not? Why should they ignore that skip intro button and take in the intro? Why are the main title
Hopefully they're just so excited for the show they cannot be delayed 90 seconds. I'm there for them. If that's their excitement level, then they don't need us. They're already ready to go.
That skip intro button discussion has been around for a couple of years now, since the streamers added it. But the truth is, the whole show is skippable with the touch of your remote anyway. The whole world, all these shows are at the behest of a single tap on a piece of plastic and it's gone, and you can watch something else. And people do that. We all do that when we watch a show and you're like, nah, I'm done 20 minutes into the show or 8 minutes into the show. And so it's all skippable, really. So we're not that threatened by the fact that this little thing is up there saying skippable, because I think everybody's got a bit of a hair trigger on their remote with content anyway, or their phone or anything else. That's just sort of the world, and it's the job just to make great work and let everything else shake out where it needs to.
Yeah, it's a good high bar that way, right? Like, I don't know, we want to be respectful to a viewer and their time. We want to give you a reason to watch it, that it helps you. And I think for all of us, there's certain shows where we must watch the intro, where you're like, I need that surge of music and visuals, lays the field for me. And I'm like, okay, you know, or you hear that sound come on, or you see that turn of the gurney in 6 Feet Under, where you're like, okay, we're going. That, I mean, I think feels delightful. So that's our job. If we do it right, then hopefully you stick around.
Well, it seems like everyone's stuck around for yours. So congratulations again on these Emmy nominations. Outstanding work. For everyone who's watching at home, subscribe to Gold Derby and make sure you stay with us this Emmy season. And Mark, Katrina, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much.